From the kitchen of the cabin, it's the 5 Games for Doomsday review.
Dungeons and Dragons. We are drawn together. We are hardwired to make connections. It's coded into our DNA to laugh, to talk, to argue, to love. A hand gently brushing through your hair, the electric touch of skin on skin, the flash of eyes as someone speaks. All of this is us. An uncontrolled impulse, undiscussed but unconsciously understood. We want to be together. First, there is a small group, huddled around a small fire, gripping with all of their strength to the coast, the source of life. They plant a few crops and a village pops up, and before long, hundreds of thousands, millions stream into cities, pulled together to sing and kill and drink and wade through each other's lives. Then we're told that separation is best. We should cordon ourselves off in little pods, only speak to a few. The town square is paved over and a shopping centre is built, and we're told to buy. And we ache. Use of antidepressants shoots up, people become angry at their confinement, their lives a single circuit of work and home and Amazon and bed, and work and home and Amazon and bed ad infinitum. Some become infected by this solitude. It warps and twists them. It turns that impulse into resentment. Some of them buy guns and shoot others, some lash a rope from the landing and their toes rotate. But most grind through that circuit and die, the need for GDP robbing them of their humanity. To live in Twitter is to live half a life. To fill the hole in you with things is to nourish yourself on stone. To live, we need each other, the simple society of each other, in a room or a park, to use the tools that evolution has given us to recognise happiness and delight and concern. To be alone is to live a half life, because we are drawn together. There comes a time, though, when the flickering of the flames or the transit of the stars becomes mundane. Even the unvarnished majesty of nature can become normal after a time, and we start to embellish, to augment. We start to enhance our society with things to distract or amuse. When a shooting star becomes passé, then culture emerges, and the 2 strongest strains of culture have been games and stories. I strap the kids into their seats and pop on a DVD for them. I assuage my guilt at keeping them quiet this way by making it something educational. Karen's left me, so we're taking this trip alone. This is going to be a long one, so my passenger seat is piled high with the kind of snacks that purport to be healthy, but we all know that's not true. I'm feeling transgressive, so I drive in my flip-flops. I start the engine, and we pull away. We start our trip in Mesopotamia. After a couple of hours, we stop at a little earthen hut by the side of the road so the kids can go to the loo. In the corner, 2 old men sit, bent over a board, rolling dice and moving pieces. One holds up his hands, incredulous, while the other man smiles. They shake hands and set up the board again. From there, it's a short hop to Burnt City near the Halil River, and as we pass through, we see people on the street moving pieces on a gridded board. We stop for dinner in Thebes and are invited to a friendly game of Senet, and the owner lets the kids win. When we stop in China, we see that people are obsessed with the laying of cards and the taking of tricks. We'll see this later on in Germany and France, people laughing and rowing over games of Carnüffel and Triomphe. At around 1913, the kids are dying for the loo again, so we stop in to see Herbert George, so they can use his bog. He's supremely animated, and in between stories of his carnal prowess, he tells us about his new game, Little Wars. We thank him and leave before the youngest starts to lick all the lead paint off the tin soldiers. We're nearly there now, so I put my foot down. We whiz past the landlord's game and a choir, the oldest commenting that all the games have adopted a singularly capitalist complexion. And just as I think I can't take the confinement anymore, we pull up at our destination. An unremarkable house in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. As I'm stretching my legs, my friend Dave pulls up. He started on a different road to us. He started at Gilgamesh, hammered it through Job and the Odyssey, hemmed and hawed about which direction to take at Elsinore, took a leisurely drive through the Turn of the Screw and the Old Man of the Sea, avoided the Quick and the Dead, and to our surprise and delight, we met at this crossroads, in Lake Geneva, in 1974. We walk up the steps, open the front door, and witness magic. It was in this house in America in the 1970s that two of humanity's greatest preoccupations became forever entwined. The question is often asked, what separates us from the animals? There are some that credit the beneficence of some unseen and capricious overlord. Some weave rhapsodic tales of our science and our art, but none of those answers are correct. The simple answer is nothing. There is nothing that separates us, as we are animals, and every achievement is just a codified extension of our evolutionarily sculpted propensity to recognise and be calmed by patterns. There is nothing that separates us from the animals, but we are exceptional at telling stories and creating puzzles, and those talents reach their quintessence in Dungeons & Dragons. D&D has stalked me throughout my life. As a child, I never played the game, but I was mesmerised by the cartoon. At 17, I bought a Ravenloft supplement and never played it. Then, in my 30s, I discovered games again, and through Acquisitions Incorporated and the release of 5th edition, I was submerged into the world of D&D. And what is so brilliant about Dungeons & Dragons is that it is pure cooperation. Everyone around the table has an active part in making the story flow. It is both the act of storytelling and the act of composition at the same time, and everyone participates. D&D is neither prescriptive nor didactic. At its best, it is collaborative creation with everyone adding their piece to the story. And this is not the story of the solitary garret or the single tortured mind. This is story as participation, story as society, story as community. What starts as ideas on a piece of paper guided by numbers transforms through the act of play. This is what makes Dungeons & Dragons so brilliant. Session after session, the world becomes more saturated with colour, and the characters that inhabit it become more defined, more real. D&D teaches many lessons, but one of the most important ones it teaches is that we are not moulded by our conceptions of ourselves, but through interaction with others. Characters start off as moored ships, all potential energy, but after they've sailed for a while, they start to reflect the people they meet. It is through the crucible of communication that the characters start becoming real. Soon the characters bear no resemblance to those sketches of the first meeting. They are three-dimensional, their reactions are natural and instinctive. Through D&D, we have created life. Through D&D, we've become gods. D&D compels us to be creative. It thrives on our creativity, so it promotes it. The spirit of those early days in Lake Geneva still flow through D&D. The idea that you can create the game yourself is still present. Sure, they publish endless supplements, but the game encourages you to create your own stories and your own worlds. It recommends that you create your own rules and play the game that you want to play. One of D&D's greatest strengths is that its fantasy is so generic that it could have been created by an algorithm. It is the thinness of its world that lets you add and amend and change and destroy. You can be irreverent or serious, faithful or iconoclastic. The setting lays down the softest of boundaries, and everything else is up for grabs. I run a game where the modern world creeps in. I run a game where rules are negotiable, and I run a game where any suggestion will be greeted with a yes. If that sounds terrible to you, that's great, because you can run a game that is completely different. You can run any kind of game that you want. Dungeons & Dragons is the most universal of games, and after even the shortest amount of play, your characters will be unique, and the very game you play will start to reflect your group. Your Dungeons & Dragons will not be my Dungeons & Dragons. That is astonishing. Everywhere we look, we see the influence of D&D, from board games to video games, movies and novels. The game that TSR published in the middle of the 1970s is one of the most culturally significant creations of the late 20th century, and Gygax and Arneson deserve to be spoken about in the same breath as Dickens and Hemingway, for the simple impact they've had on our culture. And what's more, they didn't confine us by presenting us with stories, they encouraged us to create our own, to sit around a table and create our own. We are drawn together. We are hardwired to make connections. It is an expression of our essence as human animals, and in D&D, we have found the perfect medium in which to express it. This review was made possible by the support of my patrons. You can become one too by going to patreon.com/5G4D. Thank you for listening.